live from twitch.tv and YouTube. My name's Inder, and we're here. I don't know what we're gonna call this segment, guys. We need a name for it. We're here with talking about Pokemon Unite in a somewhat competitive way for 5-sack solo queues and other ranked game modes as well. So instead of doing a normal tier list where we just get started with the tier list right away, I think it's important that we look at the pick rate and win rate for the last week in Pokemon Unite. So to no surprise, Clef and Umbreon, most popular characters in the game. They're in their respective roles. They do an insane amount of sustain for Clef. Umbreon's mean look is like nothing else in the game. It's completely broken. They're very tanky. They're very annoying Pokemon to deal with. And they also happen to shut down a lot of characters that also are popular in the game. They're both really good counters to Buzzwole. Zoroark, which is like a really strong character, struggles a lot into both of them, though, you know, there's some counterplay Zoro has into mean look Umbreon especially. But they're both just solid characters. Despite that, their win rate isn't actually that high, with Umbreon almost having a negative win rate, them both being really close to 50%. I think the reason for that, though, is even though I think both of these I would consider S tier characters, their pick rate being so high, it means that you're going to see a lot of people that might be, I don't want to say they use the word lower skilled, but you might see more people use it that are lower MMR, whereas the higher MMR players might be playing things just to play other things. And I think that might be driving the win rate down a little bit. Also, these characters, when you play in like a solo or duo or trio, but especially solo or duo, if your higher MMR player is playing these characters and your lower MMR player, say, is playing like Gardevoir in the jungle, and the other team, it's the other way around, their guard is their highest MMR and their Clef is the lowest, or their support on anything else is the lowest, the Clef and Umbreon are going to struggle more. It's harder to carry as these characters if you're the best player, or, you know, the highest rated player on your team, at least in my opinion. In certain drafts, definitely, but sometimes you can just get matched as a Clef versus an enemy Blissey or something, and if the Blissey players, damage players, perform better than the Clef team's damage players, the Blissey's gonna win a lot. That being said, I think some of the more interesting win rates, Serena being this high definitely is a little odd, but its play rate is pretty low. So, you know, that this can just happen during the start of seasons when people are climbing out of Ultra and whatnot. I'm not that surprised. Dodrio, though, I do think is a really cool Pokemon to see high up on the win rate. It makes a lot of sense. Recently, we saw characters like Gardevoir get buffed, Sylveon get buffed. Just a lot of range squishy characters are popular. Glaceon's around a lot. And Dodrio, while those range characters have somewhat decent matchups in a Dodrio, a good Dodrio player surrounded by a decent team is going to be able to, you know, destroy any of these really squishy range characters. So for once, it seemed like a nerf that we got that everyone was kind of hesitant on makes sense, right? In the patch before, we saw them nerf Dodrio's Drill Peck and its Unite move. And a lot of people were like, this is unfair. Dodrio shouldn't get nerfed. Zoroark should have got nerfed. But I think Dodrio is a lot more flexible of a speedster compared to Zoroark. Whereas Zoroark, there's a lot of hard counters to it. You might want to have like a support like Comfey to really make it work. I feel like Dodrio can work into almost any character in the game. There's definitely bad Dodrio matchups, but if you just run around and score, like Dodrio is actually one of the characters that can backcap in the late game, because you're so fast that you can get to the fight really quickly, and you can also abandon your score and still get some value, right? Like you can just do like a mini score. Oh, the fight's being broken out, I got to get there fast. So yeah, I mean, Dodrio's really, really solid character. I don't think it'll get nerfed again, so it's just going to be around in the meta for a while now. We'll see. Maybe they'll nerf Tri-Attack a little bit. Anything else we surprised about win rates? Dragapult, I think Dragapult, especially in like uncontrolled kind of games where people aren't necessarily playing to draft and to do their absolute best in terms of playing their compositions. I think Dragapult's really high, but I think Dragapult's just a good character in general. So I'm not that surprised to see it high. Eldegoss, I think it is a little high, like a little higher than expected, but this is just a solid mon. Eld gives you good pressure in the lane. It's got decent damage in team fights. It's got really good sustain. It's really tanky. It's just a solid character. Mew's win rate being high, definitely good to see. Candle's a Pokemon we want to talk about. Anything lower than we would have thought? Leafeon's one that's always lower than I think people rate it as. Like, I definitely wouldn't just look at win rates as a tier list, because I would much rather play with a Leafeon than a Sableye. I'd much rather have a Leafeon than, I would even say, a Mimikyu at times. So Mimikyu is a little different. I don't think Absol's a better speedster than Leafeon, though the win rate for Absol's higher. So yeah, some win rates I think are weird. I don't think Talon is the worst, like second worst speedster in the game. I mean, Gengar, T-Tar, Cinder all make sense. Comfey's, you know, broken, but it needs the right setup for it. Goodra has a lot of bad matchups, especially in the meta right now. So some of these make sense, other ones don't. But yeah, we'll evaluate all of them in our tier list as well. So let me open that up. Boom. So today's tier list, pretty standard. Just S through F. Maybe we'll remove a tier, maybe we'll add a tier. We'll see. In the tab here, we have Hoopa's Unbound Form. I don't know why this tier list has this. If someone knows the maker of this tier list, maybe I should reach out to them. But Hoopa's Unbound should not be on this tier list. It just makes things confusing. EX Pokemon are removed from ranked, and we know that they're going to be removed from competitive play for the first tournament as well. So we'll have them down here. And I have all the Mons sorted by role. So if you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching it YouTube live or you want to come back to the video, you'll be able to scroll through and be like, oh, I want to see what he says about this Pokemon. Like, let's say Leafeon is your main. You want to know where Leafeon gets placed. You just go to the speedster part, and then you'll be able to find your particular main. So we'll get through every Pokemon. I'm going to go in this order that I have here. So yeah, I leave Clef up here. I think Clef, very easy. I think it's one of the best characters in the game. At the really high level, I think sometimes you can see people have like smart counterplay or ways to play around Clef. But even in the latest tournament, the LG tournament, we saw Clef had like an 80% win rate or something ridiculous. So yeah, this mon is turbo broken. It shuts down a lot of the meta with Gravity. In games where Gravity isn't like a good pick, Follow Me is completely fine as a move. It makes Clef tankier, gives Clef mobility, it gives Clef some CC. So yeah, this character is just way too consistently good, and I don't see it not being good unless it gets nerfed. And just before we talk about the other Pokemon, a little bit of a tangent on Clef, and I want to make a video specifically about this character in the future as well. But this Moonlight ability makes no sense to me. How it can have such a solid like 70% per half second ratio, so like 6 ticks basically per ally, right? I'm pretty sure it's 6 ticks, right? So it's 420% healing on its from its special attack, right? And then also you get to heal up to 5 people at a time. Like, so the potential for this is a 2100% ratio. Obviously it doesn't work out this way. It's not good to look at AoE moves like this, but it's just the amount of output that Moonlight does is way too high. And then you also get longer Moonlight, so more healing and bigger AoE at level 10, which you're always going to hit. Like, this character is really problematic for the game. But cool. Let's rate all the healing supports next, just because they're easier to talk about beside Clef. I think Blissey is solid. I don't know if I would say Blissey is like an S tier character, but in terms of healing output, I think it's right up there with Clef. Gravity is definitely not, or Egg Bomb's not as disruptive as Gravity. And Blissy's value, I feel like, goes up when Hoopa's value goes up, because Egg Bomb is a way to get a portal interrupt from the support role, which it's kind of hard to get from these mons usually, at least a consistent one. And I think Hoopa's dropping in value, so I mean, we can talk about Hoopa next as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still, the mon is still solid. I'm gonna give Hoopa A tier. I think some people might give it B. Others might rate it S. I feel like some people are sleeping on Hoopa. It's definitely hard to make work. Like you need good good discipline around your macro to really make this character work. And another reason why we might not see as much Hoopa is just because Hoopa's really good with like tanky, bulky characters that you can constantly reset. But with like Lapras getting nerfed, like that's another Pokemon that's out of that contention. Clef is a support that you're competing with. There's a lot of dive characters that are really popular. There's a lot of poke damage, a lot of long range damage. Like Koopa is just kind of awkward into those setups, but I still think it's a solid character. The tier list I'm making, it's centered around competitive, but I'm not going to completely discount how solo queue works as well. It's just the overall tier list. Just completely overall. Eld, I think all, oh, that's Sableye. I think all of these mons kind of exist in a like, I think they're equally as valuable. It just depends on your team comp. Like, I think the support role outside of Clef is pretty well-rounded and pretty balanced. I'll put Comfy up here as well. And maybe this is like the order. I think this is the order I would personally have them in. With Eld being like slightly better and this being the way. I think some people might value Blissey higher. But I'm a believer in Eld. And then these last three supporters, they're like supporters, but they support in different kinds of ways. Like Sableye, I think you could definitely make it work, but it's really situational. I think situational characters can never be like really higher than B. So C is probably appropriate. Maybe I'd move it down to D. But we'll see how the tier list works out. I'll leave him at C for now. Wiggly, I definitely think is playable. I don't know. It's competing in the defender role, and there's a lot of really strong defenders right now. So it's hard to really give Wiggly the A tier, but I could definitely see it being fine here in B. Problem with Wiggly is that Umbreon is like a really annoying counter to it. It's not like 100-0 where if you have Wiggly, the other team has Umbreon, it's over. But it is really annoying just because Wiggly's Unite move is give shield and Umbreon's Unite move is take shield. And then Mr. Mime, this is where I feel like a little conflicted because I don't think Mime is good, but I don't think it's better than Wiggly. Yeah, I would say they're probably around the same. I would put them in the same tier. I think Mime is a character that's a little bit slept on, but similar to Wiggly, it's competing in the role for defender a lot of times. And there's just so many good defenders that you don't see it picked. But that being said, I think the character itself is not that weak. But yeah, this rounds out the support list. I think I feel pretty, this seems pretty reasonable. Feel pretty happy with this. And then when you're talking about supports, it's easy to just loop in defenders at the same time. So natural transition to go here. Umbreon, very clearly S tier. I think this character's kit is just, what were they thinking when they designed it, right? Like they've nerfed this mon several times, but mostly those nerfs have been to Foul Play and Snarl. Right now, Mean Look plus Wish are just really, really, really crazy characters to work with. Like if you go Mean Look Wish as a defender and you have another supporter, suddenly you have two sources of sustain on your team. You have the best like initiating tool in the game. You counter the enemy team's counter engage with your Unite move. So say the enemy team has like a Blissey, right? That they're gonna Blissey ult the guy you Mean Look so the guy doesn't die. Well, Umbreon's Unite takes the Blissey's ult shield away, takes the buddy barriers away. stuns everyone, does a lot of damage, is really tanky. Yeah, I don't know. I think comfortably I can say anything that goes in S plus is deserving of nerfs. Because they're too broken, and I don't think they'll ever be contested from the top role in the meta unless something insane changes about the game or they get nerfed. Blastoise, I think Blastoise is really, really, really good. I don't know if I want to put in the same tier as Clef and Umbreon. It could honestly be S plus, but I think it's a good start to put it at S. The Blastoise really comfortably can play a lot of different roles. You can play the defender, you can play it like an all-rounder. Both of the builds definitely have some playability as well. And it's kind of hard to lose your lane as Blastoise. And Blastoise is really good late game. So it's just a solid character to have on your team. Water Gun's a really good secure. You upgrade that into Hydro Pump. Surf plus Hydro Pump into a wall especially is some of the like strongest CC from an individual character. And this character does an insane amount of damage. Like, did you guys know Blastoise, his surf, the ratio on it is crazy. Like, look at this. It always does 800 damage flatline, but then it also takes a portion of your special attack as well. And 1100 damage from a defender at level 7, like that's crazy. Because it's a special attacker, it gets to use Spoon, so its damage isn't mitigated by defenses as hard as other like physical characters might be. But yeah, like 1100 damage nuke on a CC ability plus 500 x3, so 1500 on Hydro Pump. I mean, I guess it's like more like 1300 pre 11. But still, like this is just too much damage for a defender. Too much damage plus too much CC. I don't think Blastoise has ever really been bad, but it's definitely shining now, especially since they made it evolute at level 7. This is a huge, huge, huge buff for this character. So yeah, I definitely think it's S tier. Crustle, this is probably my first hot take of the day, but I think it's only a hot take within like the broader community. I think people in competitive have caught on to this character being broken, but Crustle is absolutely demonic of a character. The only thing holding it back from being S plus, in my opinion, is the existence of Umbreon. But other than that, like Crussle's Rock Tomb stops so many of the popular characters in the game. It pretty much counters every evolution, and you know, we're kind of in like an EV meta where all the EVs are really popular. It counters a lot of the EVs, like Hyper Voice Sylve especially, both Glaceon forms, but primarily Icicle Spears, which is more popular. Definitely both Espeon builds. You just have a long range slow that you can activate and trap people with the wall. And then X-Scissor for a defender, again, like same thing as Blastoise, but if we compare their level 6 stats, even though you get a level compare their level 7 stats, even though you get X-Scissor at 6, like you just do almost like 500%. Like this is about as much damage. This is more damage than Hydro Pump by a lot. More damage than the Surf. You hit someone into a wall, you end up stunning them for 1.5 seconds, and you make your own wall to combo off of it here, and it's a 60% slow. Not to mention, Crustle's a defender. Your job is to defend pads. You throw a Rock Tomb out, it stops your cap. You can cancel the wall early, and despawning your barrier also deals an instance of damage. Not a lot of it, but despawning your barrier is another way to stop scores, because you just have to do a little bit of damage to them. You couple that with Crustle's passive Sturdy, and he just gets an insane amount of defense as he gets low. And the thing about defense as you get low on Crustle is this is based on your HP bar. Not like this is based on your health, not your total bar including shields. So when Crustle gets really low HP, like around 20% HP, and he gets like almost maxed out Sturdy stacks, and then he Unite moves, his Unite move also gives him a massive, you know, but like 80% max HP shield plus 600. The defense calculation is based on Crustle's like red HP bar, and then he gets a shield that also gets the defense buff on it, making him pretty much unkillable, while he's also doing massive damage. And they released, you know, this new item, the Resonant Guard, which gives him even more shields, and he can shield his allies. Like the character is just definitely giga broken. And the only thing I think holding it back from being like borderline the best character in the game is, in my opinion, Umbreon. Because Umbreon's Unite move, like I talked about, it steals the shield, which completely nullifies Crustl's tankiness in the late game. And that, it's not a huge deal. Like, Crustl's still a good character, but because of Umbreon's existence, Crustl's kind of held back. Which means that if you're playing solo queue right now, and you just one-trick Crustle, you're not gonna have Umbreon in all of the games against you, but you get to play a really broken character. Even if you're just XP share, this mon is broken. Cool. Moving on the other defenders. Talking about a really broken character, here's a character that I just don't think is good at all. Goodra. Like, I think a lot of people really rate this mon highly. I saw Sprago's did a community tier list, and the community voted this mon being like A or S tier or something. But Goodra's awful, guys. Like, the thing about Goodra is it's a noob trap. You have to think of it this way, like, yes, Goodra's really tanky, but it's only really tanky if you fight it. And can Goodra forcibly fight you? I mean, it has Power Whip, but not really. What do you do when the Goodra starts running at you and you walk backwards, right? And plus, if the Goodra has a bad early game, late game, unless this character is like over leveled, it really isn't even tanky anymore. So yeah, if you want to talk about damage farming or stat farming characters, Goodra is one of the best at it. Really, it'll have a lot of recovery, it'll have a lot of damage shaken, and it'll deal a decent amount of damage, but all the damage it does is pretty meaningless. The character is also countered by a lot of the popular metamons. It's not great into Blastoise. It gets kited really hard by Crustle. Buzz, who we have yet to talk about, it completely demolishes it as well. I don't know why people are so high on Goodra. It's really not. This character needs some buffs or something if it wants to be viable, or it needs to see all the meta shift around it. But yeah, not a good mon. Gradient, sad time to be a Gradient main. It's just stat checked by everything in the game. It's like you get one mean look on it and everything that Gradient does is like completely nullified. If you want a character that runs around and scores, Sableye or Dodrio, much better at it. But like Goodra, Gradient's just really good at making stats. It's just a sad character. Sad mon. Trevenant. I think Tree is one of the defenders that is really good, but it's a defender that requires some help. Whereas Crustle is kind of independent. Like, Crustle can make a lot of lanes work because it has Rock Slide in the beginning, right? So if you wanna know what the difference between these mons is, what the site I'm using is Unite DB, by the way, if you don't know. But Crustle gets a early game stun and an early game nuke. That's pretty solid. 1 damage instance. And it's almost equally as tanky. Tree's obviously got a lot more regeneration, so it's tankier from that aspect, but they're both tanky. Crustle evolves at level 4 instead of level 5. So you get your higher stat bonus when you evolve earlier. Tree, though, you need level 5 to really get to your final form. In the early game, you have Will-O-Wisp, which is reasonable damage. Like, it is good damage, but it's damage over time, which is harder to make work as a Elastin in the early game. Branch Poke, decent damage again, but, it's nothing compared to Crustle. And then you also have to wait till level 5 to evolve. So you do want a strong laner with this, or you're going to be kind of forgiving your early game. That being said, I still think Tree's an A tier mon. I think it's solid. Lapras. This is a kind of hard character to rate. Truthfully, I could be wrong on my Lapras placement, but based on how little I've seen it and the amount that I've played, I do think it's kind of middle of the road. My mind tells me that Wiggly and Mime are better than Lapras, but Lapras is better than Goodra. So C tier feels pretty appropriate. Now, if you're used to Lapras being like an S plus tier mon, it's not, you know, you're not wrong. This character used to be very, very, very strong, but it's just been getting nerfed over and over again. And one of the biggest things about Lapras used to be the cooldown on its Unite move. It used to have an 89-second Unite move. The only defender, as far as I remember, having an 89-second Unite move cooldown. And when this got buffed to 100, I feel like you could really feel the difference. Lapras went from being able to Unite pretty much at any point during the game to now you have to be a little bit conservative with it. Used to be able to have a true combo that pretty much one-shot off Lapras Unite knock-up into Ice Beam and then triple Perish Song, or even just Water Pulse. But they nerfed the damage on Ice Beam. They nerfed the damage on Water Pulse, and Perish Song has been nerfed a lot. In the past, Lapras used to have 3% max HP per tick, so 9% on their boosted. That got nerfed to 2, total 6. The character is just in a much healthier place, which does mean that it is a little bit underpowered compared to the other defenders. Slowbro, this is a tough one to rate again. I do know it's definitely better than Lapras. I think I'd probably give Slowbro A tier. I think it's hard for this character to not always be highly tiered, just because of how powerful the Unite move is. It's still giga tanky. It's definitely not S tier. The reason why it's not S tier is because of all these special attackers that are really popular. Chandelure for one, or giga hard counters it with Imprison. Just being able to burst it down before it can even get its amnesia off. But Gardevoir, Hyper Voice Sylveon, even Espeon and Glaceon, especially Glaceon, to an extent even Inteleon, like a lot of these special attackers just completely destroy Slowbro. And with Focus Band, you know, getting the nerfs that it has over the last year or so, plus anti-healing coming out, making Focus Band even worse, I think it makes it really tough for Slowbro to survive. In fact, I don't even think people really run Focus on Slowbro anymore. They're playing Guard Spoon generally. But yeah, the Mon needs some... It's never going to be S plus tier without buffs, in my opinion, or nerfs to every special attacker in the game, but it'll never be bad. Like, it can always get its Unite move off. If you have Eject, you know, you can play Patient. You can Slowbro Unite the enemy tank a lot of times if your team has more damage than the other team and you can kill them. If you're ever trying to flip Rayquaza, Slowbro gets to just shut down one of those people that's trying to. Wait, where'd it go? Guys, how do you recover a closed tab? I think I closed it by accident. How to recover closed tab. Control Shift T. That didn't do it. Go to history. I mean, I can just go back to the page, I guess. The annoying thing is this gets refreshed down here. Oh, well, it's fine. But okay. Yeah, so Slowbro's A tier. Let's move the defenders together. Sorry about that. I think it's just these two left, right? Snorlax and Mamo. I think Lax is pretty average. Snorlax doesn't have like a lot going for it, but it's a strong early game laner. It's fine. It's not flashy at all. Yawn is pretty good to set up. A lot of the long range nukes that have become popular. Block is still good. But kind of like how I talked about Blissey, Snorlax's value kind of is dependent on Hoopa's value as well, because Snorlax is a pretty adequate counter to Hoopa. But if Hoopa's not played a lot, then you might not see Lax be played a lot. And then Mamo, I don't think it's Gutra tier bad, but like Lax, I think it's like good in the early game. It's kind of awkward later on. And then all these other defenders are just so good that it's kind of hard to justify Mamo's pick. But cool. Let's move on to the next role. think we said we are gonna do Speedsters next, right? So let's grab all the Speedsters. And we're gonna grab one that has a purple background, because Scyther is pretty much a Speedster. It's built like a Speedster, has the stats of a Speedster. It's a Speedster. That looks like all of them. Cool. So let's talk about Dojiro. We talked about Dojiro when we were looking at its win rate. I don't know if I want to put this S or A tier. I really believe in this character, but I think these mons are just so strong that I don't know if I could put Dojiro in the S tier. A tier though, I think it's solid. You definitely need for Dojiro to shine, there to not be like an overwhelming amount of CC on the other team. But even if there is a lot of CC for Dojiro, it can end up playing tri-attack agility, tri-attack jump kicks, play around the map. Mean look, definitely really bad for Dojiro, hurts Dojiro a lot. But even into Umbreon, I think Dojiro can just play like back up around the map, play sneaky, and wait out the things like mean look. And it depends on the rest of the composition as well. But I think it's a good character. I do think it's a solid A tier mon. Maybe at the top of the A tier. In contrast, though, I think Gengar is awful. Like, I don't know. I see a lot of people that are like, okay, but in this situation, Gengar would be so good. Like, no. Gengar's early game is just so god-awful. You ever fall behind on this character, the game's over. Your Unite move doesn't help you at all in the late game for taking big team fights. Like, its Unite move is just awkward to make work well. Its passive isn't as good as the other speedsters. Like, a lot of speedsters have broken things about their passives, right? Whether it's Dojiro's like speed gauge and scoring mechanic, it's Zoro's illusion to iframe stuff. You know, Meow and Leafeon have broken passives, and Gengar is just whatever. He just walks a little fast. And even in solo queue, like this character needs to jungle because its laning phase is awful. Its first gank is very hit or miss. If your first gank doesn't go well, you're going to be turbo behind. You want to stack on him, but it's hard to get stacked on him. Like, just remember, general rule of thumb, this doesn't only apply to Pokemon Unite, but just MOBAs as a whole, is there's some damage characters that can only excel when they have a lead on their opponent, right? Whether it's an experience lead in Pokemon Unite or an item lead in like League of Legends or Dota or whatever it might be. Some mons need to be higher level or stronger on paper compared to their opponents. And the ones that are good are the ones that are strong when ahead, but have tools to get ahead, right? And they have tools to deal with when they get behind. Dojiro, you get behind, doesn't matter. You go and you Unite move a squishy character, they're gonna die. Like, especially if you see like a Gardevoir use eject, you're 2 levels down the guard, you can ult the guard, boom. Suddenly you're getting a kill, you're back in the game. Gengar, you ever fall behind his Gengar and you try to Unite move in his Gengar, like, you're not gonna be able to pull off a kill. Like, first of all, like, everyone, like any reasonable player is gonna see the Gengar thing come up. They're gonna be protecting their allies. A lot of its damage can get body blocked if you're playing Dream Eater or Shadow Ball. If you're playing Hex, there's things like full heal that people can select against you. Gengar sucks. Zoro, on the other hand, I think Zoro's solid. I want to give it the same tier as Dojiro because this mon is truly broken, and we'll put it beside Comfy because these two characters together definitely are insane. But it is a hard meta to be Zoroark. Clefable Umbreon obviously shut it down really hard, but there's a lot of attackers that are solid into it. Slowbro's a hard counter to this character. It's not easy to play into Crustle, definitely not easy to play into Wiggly. Like, all the defenders in the game, naturally good into Zoro, but even the supporters now are really good. Not much to talk about it, though. I do think this character, without receiving any buffs or nerfs, could instantly be an S tier character. We would just need to see all the higher rated mons receive some nerfs. Scyther, I I don't think this character is great. I don't think it's Gengar Gradient tier, but I do think it sits around Gudra tier. It's a speedster. It's a speedster that feels like it should be good, but I don't know. All the other speedsters just do its job a little bit better. I do think like there's certain players that can make this character work, and it could definitely be higher in the hands of those types of players. But evaluating like all the characters relative to one another, I definitely think Scyther is just a lot weaker. Ever since the range got nerfed on its Unite move, it's just hard to get going on this mon. Yeah, and definitely this character needs to have a lead. Better job at getting ahead than Gengar, because your Unite move can definitely get you some picks. But yeah, I don't know. I think it struggles. Give Zeraora a similar rating. Maybe I'll put it a little bit above Scyther. Yeah, I don't know. It's just Zera feels too. It doesn't feel like it has like a big enough oomph. You know what I mean? Like Dodrio's oomph is that he Unite moves. Boom, big knock up, maximum speed gauge. All of its moves are unlocked. It's going crazy. You know, you look at Crussel's oomph. You know, X's are just massive damage, big stuns. All these characters have like an oomph factor to them, right? All of them, right? Big Clef unites, gravity makes an oomph. But Zera just, I don't know, it just feels like it just feels generic in a weird way almost. Like, I don't know, it just needs some buffs, I think. I think it could be a little bit higher, but I think only because in solo queue and like uncoordinated games, you see Zeras get away with a lot more than they should. Volt Switch in reality is a move that without full heal up can get really countered really easily. Because the moment you try to take your Volt Switch back, if during that Volt Switch or any point in between, you receive any type of stun, any kind of knock-up, anything that's disruptive, it'll cancel your Volt Switch and put you right where that stun occurred to you. So, I don't know, like you could Volt Switch in and there's just, you get drill packed. I mean, you're probably not playing that into Dodrio, but any of the tree stuns, things like Crustle, Blastoise, it's awful into gravity. Mean Look will stop you. Wiggly's awful. Like, it just has such a bad matchup into things that are strong. So no, I'm not a big believer on Zera. Leafeon, on the other hand, I think this character is solid. I think it's borderline S, maybe A. I think it depends on a lot of factors. But I think I could give this an S tier. The thing about Leafeon is you can argue that when the game gets really competitive and the players all are playing like the full like meta mind games, that Leafeon might get lower in rank. But for like 99% of the games, all Leafeon players need to do is start in the jungle, clear the Xatu, go do the red buff, and then walk to a lane. You walk to either lane, you have Solar Blade at level 4. It's by far the best secure move that you can ask for at level 4. And you're instantly winning your team that lane, if not getting a kill right away. In solo queue, 50% of the time, you're just instantly killing a lane. Because you're going to have max charge Solar Blade, which at level 4 is 1700 damage. There's nothing in the game that does this much damage at level 4. And because of your passive, you get it max charged instantly at level 4, which is an insanely early part of the game because you can just do one buff and be online at that point. And then on top of that, you have a Unite move combo with your Leaf Blade, Solar Blade that can one-shot anyone. Your Leaf Blade farms your charge for you to be able to do the damage. Yeah, I don't know. Leafeon's crazy. That being said, I think once everyone's like really on point though, and the games get more and more competitive, I think I could see Leafeon's value dropping a little bit. but for now, I think it's easy S tier. Meowscarada, I think it's right here in this tier. I definitely don't think it's a bad character, but it does have some counterplay that makes it really annoying to deal with. And if those things get changed and are fixed, I think Meowscarada is easily A, maybe even S tier. But right now, Meowscarada's Flower Trick gets cleansed by any of the full heal mechanics in the game, which includes Zoroark's illusion, but also just includes full heal. So its main damage nuke can be mitigated by full heal, which is pretty unheard of for most speedsters, right? Like imagine you could full heal and not get hit by Solar Blade or any other speedster. It's crazy, right? But yeah, Flower Trick gets removed by full heal. And also for whatever reason, Flower Trick can't be detonated in gravity. So I don't know what that's about. On top of that, Meowscarada needs level 6 to really come online, whereas Leafeon comes online at level 4. But its passive is completely nuts. So I think this is a really good speedster. The better people get at it, I think it could definitely deserve an A tier. But right now where we're at, I think it's a really good B tier speedster. And then I think Talon's a perfect mon to put in the C tier. Just because now we have like one speedster in each tier. And I think I definitely feel this way. I think Leafeon more valuable than Dodrio, who's more valuable than Zoro, Zoro's slightly more valuable than Meow, but Meow could overtake Zoro in a lot of drafts. And then I think Talon is really strong. Maybe doesn't have the best situations like Meow might, but honestly, like I could see even Talon being C tier or B tier. Honestly, maybe I do put Talon here. No, because I want one in each. I think I like the way it looks. And I want to put Absol in the D tier. I thought about putting Absol in C tier, but... what do we think looks better? Do you think this looks better? Talon B, Absol C, or Talon C, Absol D? I don't know. Talon C, Absol D. Absol's hard to be? No. So the thing about Absol, right, is you do a lot of damage, yes, but you're gambling every time you're playing Absol, right? If your Pursuit Auto doesn't crit, this isn't that great of a damaging move, right? Your Pursuit Auto has to crit for you to do the same amount of damage a Leafeon does at level 4, and which you have to be level 5 for. And Leafeon gets to do it from the comfort from the backline, whereas Absol has to get into melee range to use it. Now, here's the other thing that almost no one in solo queue does for whatever reason, but Absol's damage is empowered on Pursuit if it hits the back. If you're running away from an Absol and turn around when it comes to auto attack you, and it doesn't get its backstab damage, it's doing half the damage it normally would. And if it doesn't crit and hits you from the front, this mon does 0 damage. So, no, sure, you can say in solo queue, if I was making a purely solo queue tier list, maybe I'd rate Absol a little bit higher. But if you're playing against people that have brains and aren't fully running it down every game, Absol has a lot, like everything Absol does relies on your opponent not understanding how Absol works, okay? Pursuit Sucker Punch is probably its best build. Pursuit can get tanked from the front. Sucker Punch doesn't get activated if you don't get hit during your Sucker Punch. And its Unite move, if your allies stand inside it like inside and tank it with you, does a lot less damage. Because this spreads the damage across all the people that are getting hit by it. So no, Absol is really easy to play around as long as you're trying to play around it. Sure, if you're playing in solo queue and as the Absol player, you get to go and jump and kill their underleveled mons over and over again, and then you get to generate a lead and you dominate the game from there, then yeah, this mon's gonna feel like it's really good. But you have to imagine like this tier list is being comprised in a way where all 10 players in the game are trying their best to win. And in solo queue, that's not the case. I think this is what we would expect, something better in solo queue if the players were better as well. But yeah, this is my list. Again, if you think Absol is higher and it's the best character in the game, keep playing it. You know, don't let me stop you. Cool. All right, so that wraps up the speedsters. We're not forgetting anyone, right? No. Cool. Let's move on to all rounders. This is definitely probably the most varied list, where I think you're going to see Mon spread out. I guess speedsters are pretty varied as well. But easiest one to start with is Buzzwole. I'm going to give Buzz the S+ tier. And that's even despite Buzz being countered by the other two Pokemon in the S+ tier. It's just the character has the kit that Buzzwole has is too well-rounded for it to not be successful. And I like some of the changes that they've done. In the past, your muscle gauge, which is a big mechanic of Buzzwole and how he does a lot of his damage, didn't get charged from wild Pokemon. So it's really hard for you to build your muscle gauge. But ever since they made his muscle gauge really easy to get stacked up, his early game has become so much better. And if Buzz gets a good start, gets some good stacks, you can just combo down people. Buzz is really, really good at taking advantage of frontliners. Like, it takes advantage of a lot of different things in the game, right? But Buzz especially is really good into like frontliney kind of Pokemon that don't have a lot of stuns, right? You open up on like a Goodra, the Goodra's just gonna get comboed by you the whole, like, he's gonna get true comboed by you and die before he can get any of his moves off. Same thing with like Lapras. Same thing with a lot of other all-rounders in the game, like Azumarill, obviously Scissor, but anything in the game, like, they're just gonna get full comboed by him, and unless they have a way to go unstoppable, they're not gonna be able to stop it. And his early game is not bad. What I wanted to show you guys, why I pulled up Buzz's page here, is Felstringer. So this move, you might look at it and be like, oh, it doesn't do that much damage, but it does more damage depending on how much muscle gauge you have, which, to be honest, I don't even know exactly what that would look like. Damage dealt by this move increases by each muscle gauge increment consumed at a rate of 12.5%. So I think if your muscle gauge is full, you're probably doing like double damage or something. Or x6. So 12.5 times 6. So yeah, you're almost doing double damage, 75% more on your Felstringer. So just because we've been using the same numbers in the early game as like reference, right? It'd be times 1.75. It's an 1100 damage nuke, which is really, really good at securing in the early game. Obviously, there's some counterplay to it, but the moment Buzzwole gets 5, that counterplay kind of starts to go away. Because whereas you could tank, you can tank Felstringer for your team, you can't really tank Superpower. If you go and step in, take the Superpower, the initial damage is hardly what you're worried about. It's the slam damage that really does the majority of it. Plus it does, 1.75 damage if you're fully charged. Eric Snyder, thank you for the gifted and the $5 super chat. Gyarados comes out, I think, January 25th. So probably like 24 hours from now, if I had to guess. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, though. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the rest of the all-rounders. Buzzwole is giga broken. It's time to start rating some of these other ones. This is probably another slightly hot take, but I think the ACL, the Asia League players, are definitely right in that Dragonite is a character that people should respect. We see it get picked in Japan and in the eastern region of the world, but for whatever reason, people in the West aren't playing this mon that much. Even I lost a tournament game to D9 not that long ago. And Hyper Beam is still a really good secure move. If it gets ahead at all, it's way too tanky to bring down. If you ever have any kind of lead in any team fight, you can instantly shred an objective. Like, I think it's a very, very solid character and should probably see more play than it does. But that doesn't mean I think it's like an A or a B tier mon. I just think it's a solid character overall. Flipping like dogs not as respected in EU and US. That's not true. People love to flip like dogs here. It's a counter pick to D-Knight. A lot of the long range characters, so like Inteleon, Venusaur, you know, D-Knight can't auto attack these characters from range. It steps up to auto someone else. It gets sniped. It loses half its HP. It's not really good. Clefable, actually, funny enough, is a pretty hard counter to Dragon Dance. Makes it really hard for D-Knight to get some value. Buzzwole kind of can go infinite on D-Knight as well. D-Knight steps up because it's kind of this mid-range character. It'll be in range of Buzz to get super comboed. So the meta mons really don't favor D-Knight very well, but the character itself, I think, can be picked in some situations. Garchomp, definitely noticeably worse in my opinion compared to Dragonite. I don't think it's as bad as these two tiers down here. Like I feel like Garchomp's never gonna be a character that's awful, but because it's a melee damage dealer that excels at a close range, and it can only really go in, like it's not a character that can go in and out. Once it goes in, it's in. Because of that, I think it'll never be like an S+ tier mon unless it gets buffs. But I mean, you leave this character alone and he can go crazy. In the right circumstances, Garchomp definitely goes nuts. And its early game definitely isn't as bad as some people make it look like. Because we've definitely seen people that are Gibbles for like 3-4 minutes, Gabites that get stuck at level 8 for the whole game. I think why you see Garchomp players struggle so much in solo queue is because bad players like to play Garchomp, and not that Garchomp is as bad as it looks. That being said, Machamp is sad of a character. I don't know if I can put it F tier, but I'm really, really tempted to put it down here. Like, I guess it can't be F because its level 1 through 4 is not as bad as these two, especially Gengar's. But its Unite move is just so underwhelming compared to a lot of the other characters that exist. But if you play it as the quarterback, it's definitely S tier, S+. So I guess we'll put it in the D tier. Garchomp, I'm willing to put right beside, or T-Tar, I'm willing to put right beside Chomp. These characters suck in the early game. If you get to the late game, they're really, really broken. Especially T-Tar, if you can survive to the late game. It's really broken, but you have to invest into it, and it needs help from outside resources. So not great. Serena, I've been playing some Serena, and I think this character is not that bad, but it's just, remember what I said about some speedsters, that these types of characters are good when ahead, but they don't have a lot of resources to get themselves ahead. And Serena's problem, really, honestly, is that its levels 1 through 6 are just so god-awfully bad. Like, yeah, you get your stomp at level 5, but it's really your level 6 once you're fully evoluted and you get your passive. Serena's passive is really what makes it broken. And not getting access to Queenly Majesty until level 6 makes it so that you lose the early game so hard and characters can kind of just run away with the game from there. I think if it got its passive at level 1, and its passive worked on its other moves, this character would be borderline broken. So yeah, I don't know. I want to see potential in Serena, and maybe I'm willing to put it. Maybe I'm not willing to put it this low. I could put it in the C tier, or maybe at the top of D tier. But I do think it's noticeably worse compared to these two. Like even Larvitar's early game is better than the Steenie thing or whatever the early game is. Zard, I don't know. I feel like Charizard's like middle of the road C tier. This is another character I think people are like slightly, like ever so slightly sleeping on. Only because Charizard, into the evolutions has like a really interesting kind of matchup where, yeah, the Zard ult is really annoying into the evolutions passives, but if the evolution passives are out, Charizard kind of just runs them over. He doesn't die and he can kill them all. You have to jungle with it though. And it does need some scaling and needs a lot of farm to make work. And I'm not saying it's like it's slept on and it's a hidden S tier character. I just think some people might rate it F tier, and I think it's not as bad as people rate it. Yeah, the level 7 buff I think is what it made me be a little bit higher on Zard, for sure. All right, Metagross. This is a character I struggle with rating because this definitely was one of the best Pokemon in the game. Once it got that buff, but ever since the nerfs were handed out to Gyro Ball and then Magnet Rise, like it definitely feels noticeably weaker. And it gets kind of messed up pretty hard by Buzzwole. But I think despite that, I still think it's an A tier mon. It's got a decent matchup into most of the speedsters in the game. Its early game is not great, but it's not the worst. And at level 5, it's a fine character on the map at that point. So yeah, I think I'm good to put it in A tier. Aegislash, another really weird character to rate. I feel like we don't see a lot of this mon. I do think it's noticeably better than Serena and Champ. And there's definitely some scenarios where it feels like Aegislash is impossible to deal with, but I don't think it's that great. I think it needs a lot of help, like a lot of the other mons. It struggles with getting ahead. When it gets behind, its Unite move is especially kind of bad, because at that point, all it does is secure objectives, but if you're so behind you can't even get to the objectives, then it's kind of troublesome. But into the right kind of matchups, the right kind of like, you know, if the enemy team is like double speedsters, like maybe like Leafeon, maybe like Meowscarada or something like that, or Leafeon Dodrio, and the Sword team didn't get completely annihilated in the early game, it can be really hard for double melee teams to take down Sword. Or even if they're like one speedster, one all-rounder that's not Buzz, Aegislash can get really, really, really tanky in those spots. But its early game and mid game, both are pretty bad. Its Unite move's kind of underwhelming. So I think it struggles. Sword's good versus Buzzwole? No. I think some people might see the wide guard interaction and feel like it's not bad into Buzz, but you know, the moment Buzz turns level 5, like it's gonna completely eat the sword away. And if the Sword's ever caught in Sword form, Buzz is just dead to Buzz. If they're on an even footing, maybe the Sword can do all right, but Sword's never going to be on par with Buzz. But yeah, let's move on. Blaziken, this is a mon that I really wanted to see in the A tier, but the more I've played with and against it, I don't think it's good enough to be in the A tier. Like, all of these characters look like, on paper, I feel like they outshine Blaziken. But Blaziken's not bad, right? It's early game. Torchic is pretty awful. Torchic's really, really bad. And it has like an awkward phase, like level 5 through 7. But the moment this character is online at level 8, it puts a lot of pressure on the enemy team. I think maybe if we see things like Clef and Umbreon get nerfed, I mean, Blaziken also is just hard countered by the first 5 Pokemon in this tier list, right? It's awful into Clef, Umbreon, Buzz, Blast, Crustle. So yeah, maybe if these characters all get nerfed, Blaze could be an A tier character. But until then, it's just its early game isn't strong enough, and late game it gets too countered by the meta mons. and it's not even like spectacular to begin with. All right, Mimikyu. When Mimikyu first got its player up buffs, we definitely thought this character was ridiculously overtuned, and I think it kind of was, but I don't think it was as good necessarily as we might have thought it was, and I definitely think it might have been a little overrated when it was good, and then after it got its nerfs, I definitely feel like it's kind of overrated. I want to put it in the C tier, but if I put it in the C tier, I'm saying I think Dragonite's a better character than Mimikyu. Do I agree with that personally? I think I do. Honestly, I think I do. I think the better players are, kind of like how I talked about with Absol, the better people get at the game, the easier it is to play on Mimikyu, right? Mimikyu's niche, its entire character pretty much revolves around its Shadow Sneak, right? Its Shadow Sneak, it tags the first person it hits. You can activate it again to teleport to the person you tagged, and does a whole lot of things, like it resets on kill, it does bonus damage, yada, yada, yada. But I think the better players, you'll notice, their defenders and supporters are going to stand in the way of Mimikyu and take that Shadow Sneak. And if Mimikyu doesn't get their Shadow Sneak on a squishy character in the late game, it's not going to be able to do much in an endgame team fight. The Unite move can get countered by people damaging the Mimikyu to break them out. The Shadow Sneak can get body blocked. If you end up going play rough, you can get put in a really awkward spot, especially if the other person has eject and they eject while you're play roughing on them. You'll follow them in the middle of the enemy team. So people tend to go Shadow Claw a lot, but Shadow Claw damage takes too long to ramp up in the end game. So yeah, I think Mimikyu is a character that definitely has potential. In the right circumstances, it can go pop off and be crazy, but there's a lot of counterplay to it. Definitely a better version of Gengar in a lot of ways. That I can get behind. Let's talk about Luca next, who I feel like is pretty middle of the road as well. I don't know, I'll pop it somewhere in the middle here of C tier. And the more I look at my list, the more I feel like D-Knight seems a little out of place almost. Just in the context of other all-rounders, because I do think D-Knight slept on, but not by that much. We'll keep it here for now. I don't know, I'm not a fan of Lucario, and I think some people would disagree with me. Some competitive players would disagree with me. But this character, I don't know, the moment you power up punch in, you're kind of just stuck. Like, there's so much damage in the game. This character really needs 11. Like, they've just added too much CC to the game. We're not having unstoppable while charging pup baseline. Means that you're not going to even be able to resolve your power up punch. And it's another character that, as people get better, they tank the power up punches. It only hits the first thing that gets hit. So yeah, I think it's pretty middle of the road. Can definitely work if you get a good start. But I don't think it's that crazy. We'll talk about the bears at the end. We can talk about Scissor next. This character is just absolute garbage trash. If somehow you found my content and you've been like, prior to watching my stream, you've been of the opinion that Scissor's like really good character, and you're one of the people that plays Scissor in the jungle and it feels like it never dies, this character, like Gudra, is just a noob trap. It doesn't do enough damage to force you to fight it. Like, you can just really a lot of times walk away from it. Its tankiness is only real into one damage type because it gets bonus defense and not special defense. It has no way to secure last hits or objectives because Bullet Punch is just like small ticks of damage. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. This character just should not exist in the game. It's definitely a fun character to play, but do know that by picking this character and taking the jungle, you're close to griefing your team. I don't think there's any such thing as griefing your team by picking a certain character. But if you are going to pay Scissor, at least take a path. Go to a lane. Let something else on your team jungle so that your early game advantage isn't wasted on this mon. Azumarill, this character would be a lot better if like everything in the game didn't just like hard counter it. Another thing about Azumarill is a common trend of mons that I rate kind of low. I don't even know if I think it's better than any of these all-rounders, to be honest. Maybe like here. A common trend, like I talked about with Absol, we talked about with Mimikyu, is there's just too easy counterplay into Azumarill. Like, Azumarill's mechanic is that it crits as long as it's dealing single target damage. But if you stand on top of your ally as a defender or supporter that's getting hit by its Aqua Tails, you heavily reduce its damage output. On top of that, you have to sweet spot the Aqua Tail for it to do more damage. Otherwise, it does half damage, basically. And a lot of characters just have so much mobility to stand on top of the Azumarill to not get sweet spotted. So between you not getting the sweet spot on Aqua Tail or your ally tanking it with you, I think there's just too much counterplay to it. I do think it could probably work if the meta was a little bit different, but with these defenders that are popular, plus Buzzswole being in the game and everything just being so strong in the early game as well, like Azumarill's niche of having a level 8 fast charging Unite just isn't good enough when everything else in the game is also just so strong at that point. What if Azu just always crit no matter what? Then the mon would be a lot better for sure. All right. I'm assuming this is Rapid Striker Shifu, Water Bear. This character has just been over nerfed at this point. I don't think it's as bad as the things down here, but it is. This is a character that needs to. It's just weak. Like it needs to get ahead, but even if it's ahead, it doesn't even feel that good. And it's got one of the worst Unite moves in the game. They're changing the rules as well in UCS, where if they use them on once, it can't be used again. I don't think we're getting that in UCS. I think that's in like, that was like an ACL for like the finals for some LAN tournament or something, but correct me if I'm wrong. That's not what we're getting in UCS. It's just going to be normal draft. But yeah, Water Bear's trash, TLDR. Like, yeah, I don't think the mon is remotely playable, really. And the only reason I'm not putting it F tier is because I think these mons are more trash. Okay. Let's play. Where do we put Red Bear? I think Red Bear. It feels noticeably worse than Luca because its early game is not as good, so it needs to jungle. But its Unite move is still, you know, like almost a bro ult. So maybe I'll put it beside Luca, but I don't think it's that good either. I mean, I think this is the guy that got banned on the YouTube chat. Anyways, don't worry about him. Yeah, I think Red Bear is not bad, but both our Shifus used to be so much better, and they've just been nerfed over and over again. And they always had the issue that you need level 5 for them to come online, and it's really hard to get level 5 if you're in the lane. And committing your jungle resources means that you don't have an evolution that can just one buff level 4 gank your lanes. So yeah, I think Red Bear can definitely work in some drafts. The Water Bear is not really playable in my opinion. But that's kind of cool to see, right? Zacian, Mewtwo aren't allowed in ranked right now. The Urshifus aren't that good. We're going to talk about Mew very soon, but Mew's gotten some nerfs as well. Like all the mons we used to see as Giga Broken are no longer really at the top of the ladder, which is pretty nice to see. All right, so that wraps up all rounders. We're gonna move on to attackers next. I want to just sort these attackers by special attack and physical attack. And we'll talk about the special attackers. We'll talk about them second. We'll do the physical attackers first. Because I do think they kind of exist in their own archetypes as almost, you know? Damn, we have a lot more special than we do physical. There are really only 5 physical attackers? Damn, when did they add so many mages to the game? Okay. Okay, so Dragapult. I think this is easy 8... Where'd he go? I dropped him. Easy 8-tier character. I think in like solo queue and maybe 5-sec ranked, you would put this in like S. But in competitive, it's definitely a lot harder to make this mon work. You're gonna be the focus of all endgame team fights, and you're built by paper. Oh, Meow was here, right? You're built like paper. So if the enemy team decides to use their Unite moves on you, which they should, they're pretty much just gonna one-shot you in the late game. So you need like a support like Blissey. Not even Clef can really protect deep ult, but Clef isn't that bad. You need like Blissey or Eldegoss or maybe like a Wiggly, something to protect your Dragapult in the late game. And you also need to find a way to get ahead. So one of the things about Dragapult that you guys should know if you don't is he has this move called Phantom Force, okay? Phantom Force makes you invis and it gives you some move speed and it helps build up your passive, which gives you attack speed. All these things are great. The biggest thing about this is it gives you a permanent attack buff of 10 attack up to 10 times, right? So if you compare that to attack weight, which gives you 12 6 times, if you get a fully stacked Phantom Force, you're getting pretty much the same attack a fully stacked attack weight would, without having to consume an item slot, right? Because attack weight gives you 18, or let's say 12 times 6 plus 18, so 90. If you get 10 KOs as Dragapult, it's the same as having a better attack weight. And then you also get to run Muscle Bend and Scope Lens and Rapid Fire Scarf. So Dragapult essentially is a mon that has the 4th item slot, which is what makes it crazy in the late game. But if it doesn't get those stacks, it doesn't have a real Unite move. It doesn't have like a big oomph outside of that, and it can really, really struggle. So I know some people might say Dragapult's the best character in the game easily. You have to understand that there's a lot of conditions making this character work good or not. Cool. So let's see Greninja. I don't know if Greninja's bad enough to put in the F tier. I do feel like Greninja's better than everything in the F tier, better than most of these D tier characters. I don't know. This mon's also built like paper, doesn't do as much damage as Dragapult. And with all the CC in the game, if you get hit by anything, you're pretty much just instantly dead out of the game. And yeah, you can snowball as Greninja. If you get to late game and you're level 15 Greninja, you can definitely pop off, and it can sometimes hit level 15, but it's just too inconsistent and it's too easy to bang. Desi, on the other hand, I think is probably the only one of the physical attack ones I'll put in the B tier. These are all noticeably worse. But yeah, this one's solid. I think Charging Charm and Bangle were both 2 item additions that are really good for Decidueye. And like, it's not horrible in the lane. You know, Rowlet's not a great laning character, but it's not horrible in the lane. You get some stacks on it. It's got one of the best ratios in the game to stack attack weight with. So if you do want to stack attack weight, which is good, your Spirit Shackle will do an insane amount of damage, which is also like 450% ratio. My God. And then it also gets increased by 20% if you're at range. So yeah, I don't know. Decidueye Spirit Shackle definitely hurts. Charging Charm makes it so you have stronger arrows. Bangle makes it so you have some answers to Clef for some anti-healing. Overall, I think it's really, really good mon. I don't think it's good enough to put in the A tier, but It's definitely fine down here in the B tier. Then you have Dura and Cinder. I don't know if they go into the F tier or not, but my god, are these Pokemon some hot trash right now. I don't know. I'm not a believer in really either of them. I think maybe I might rate. I think I like Greninja better than Cinder. So I think I'd put him. I think I'd do something like this. Cinder at the end of the D tier, Dura at the start of the F tier. I don't know. They're really good at hitting objectives and they have decent secures as well. But like you're just gonna get blown out before that situation even comes in. So yeah, I don't know. They both need some buffs if they want to be good mons. But all right, let's talk about some special attackers. Now, looking at this list of Pokemon that's left, I don't think there's a single character here that's F tier, by the way. So nothing is getting put in the F tier. They're all really solid mons, some much better than others for sure. But let's start off with Inteleon. I think maybe for a little bit people were starting to undervalue him, but the more I play Pokemon Unite, the more I realize that Inteleon is just broken, man. Like it makes it so that you'll never have a bad laning phase. Water Gun is just that strong in lane. Its Felsinger gives it way too much mobility. It's really annoying to kill this thing. Snipe Shot into like 90% of the characters. One snipe shot and they're out of the game if the enemy team doesn't have good sustain. Even if they do have good healing, it's really, really hard for them to keep up with snipe shots. And if anyone ever gets low as a result of anything else in the game, they're getting one shot off this. And I haven't even talked about its Unite move, that not only does it just give you guaranteed crits on your autos, but it does something for an auto attack character that no other auto attacker in the game essentially gets, other than maybe Decidueye, but it gives you vision of people when they walk into bushes, right? So whereas a character like Dragapult, you know, if Dragapult opens up on someone and that character walks inside a bush, Dragapult loses all its damage output, right? But you can't even walk into bushes to dodge Inteleon's ult damage because it just reveals you. It also exists as a soft counter to invisible characters in the game. Not that we have a lot of those, but just so broken. Such a good mon. I think I'd put it like right before Leafeon. Let's talk about the evolutions next altogether. I think that's pretty fair to do. Glaceon and Sylveon. I think these are both A tier. At like different points in the A tier. Maybe like here. I think Glaceon could go here. And maybe like Sylveon's like somewhere around the more middle of A tier. But like I talked about Leafeon, you can put them in the jungle. They take one buff. They have level 4. And they can instantly put pressure on lanes. Glaceon kind of needs level 6 to really be successful. But Ice Shard plus Icicle Spears makes it so all defenders in the game are pretty much just like 1 or 2 combos away from getting 100 0'd. And yes, there's counterplay to Icicle Spears. Like you can block it, but not even the tankiest character in the game wants to stand in front of that Icicle Spear. Like it does too much damage. And it's an evolution, so gets all its moves at level 6, its Unite move at level 8, and all its move upgrades by level 12. So if it's not noticeably weaker than the other mons, it's just always going to be good because how it scales really well in the early game. Sylveon, similar kind of deal. They buffed it not that long ago, so if you're coming back to the game and you don't know, Sylveon used to have the longest or one of the longest Unite move cooldowns. That got noticeably buffed from 139 to 112. Its special attack baseline got buffed by 20 at level 1, which is an insane amount of buff on the baseline. And its Unite move does more damage as well. But buffing its passive, or buffing its base special attack, means that not only are you buffing its special attack, which buffs all its moves and its boosted auto damage, but you're also buffing Sylveon's passive, where it increases its special attack by a percentage. So if you increase its flatline special attack, you increase its special attack even further, more by its passive, and then even more by its Calm Mind, which does another 40% special attack, which end up making like Sylveon's Hyper Voice build with Calm Mind really strong, but also you can flex into Mystical Fire and Draining Kiss as well, and be really, really tanky into special attackers, because Sylveon's Mystical Fire reduces their special attack. So yeah, overall, just both really, really solid mons. Espeon, I think, perfect character to put over here in the B tier. I don't think it's as spectacular as Glace or Sylveon, but it's kind of in like the middle, where it definitely does really good damage to frontliners. I think Stored Power, Psybeam is probably its best build, but Psyshock is still like almost just as good. So you're really good at dealing damage to tanks. Its Unite move is a stun, which neither one of the other evolutions has, but it is a little bit more counterable. But its level 4 gank with Stored Power is still, it's really good. It's kind of awkward because if you take Stored Power, you lose your secure move, and if you go Psyshock, you have to have like, you know, it's kind of hard to hit raw Psyshocks, but the mon is just overall good. It's a good laner. So if you want to play Psyshock in lane, it's solid. If you want to jungle, it's not bad as well. Just a really good character overall. Let's talk about Gardevoir, because this character got buffed recently as well, right? It's kind of hard to rate all these characters because I think all the special attackers in the game are good. Aside from Cram, I think all of them are at least B or above. It just kind of depends on the draft. Like I think Gardevoir definitely can be in the A tier. They buffed Gardevoir's Unite move, which I never thought they would have, because the Unite move was already so good, but for whatever reason, maybe because they had the Battle Pass coming out, maybe because someone at Timmy really likes this character, they buffed this Unite move from 112 not to 100 but to 89 seconds, right? So 89 seconds used to be like the niche that like Pikachu and some very few characters in the game had, and now Gardevoir has it. Imagine there used to be a world where Gardevoir got its Unite at level 10, and it was a 134-second cooldown, to now it gets it at 9, and it has an 89-second cooldown. That's insane. Plus Spoon has come out, plus you have access to Cursed Incense, so you can deal with like all the healers in the game. Like Gardevoir is just so good. Of course, its early game is a little bit tough. You know, if it is jungling, it's really slow out of the jungle. It's not the best laner, but it can work. So I think there are things that keep it from being S tier, but it's definitely a solid A tier character. I want to save us talking about Mew and talk about Cram, because I do think Cram's the worst of the characters here. Cram's definitely has its place as a character that could get played at some point, but I think the current meta doesn't really favor it very well. If you want to play Mage Cram, it gets outranged by pretty much every other mage in the game right now. And all the other mages are all so good anyways. And if you want to play Dive Cram, there's just so much, like, how are you going to dive into character? Like, you get countered by gravity, you get mean looked and you're dead, Buzzwole goes infinite on you, the tanks, the moment you dive in, they hit you with anything, you're dead. If you get outranged by Snipe, you're dead. You get bonked by one Solar Blade, you're dead. Like, you really just can't play the team fights very well. And all the meta is just really strong into the mon, so I don't think it's like a bad character. I think everything D and below are like bad. Like bad, but Cram's not great for sure. Okay. Let's talk about some other really good characters, and Candelier. This Pokemon, I think, was a mon that I slept on for too long. But Flamethrower is just insanely broken of a mon, of an ability. Like it's like Gardevoir Psyshock, plus Future Sight combined into one, where you get like, or it's just a better guard Future Sight. Where guard's Future Sight, you have to hit an enemy. It's slow. It's telegraphed almost. Flamethrower happens instantly. Yeah, you can't use it on people that are diving on top of you, but it can get reset off wild Pokemon. And a lot of the game, for special attackers especially, is played around the Altaria, right? Whether it's the top or the bottom or the central Altaria. Kando's like one of the best Pokemon at controlling that. Its only downfall, the only reason it's not an S tier character in my opinion, is it has such a weak early game that, you know, you need to dedicate some kind of resources to it. You need to either have like a really good XP share support or defender with you to make it work, something that's good in the early game, like Crustle, even Snorlax can, you know, help it get out of the early game. Or if it is jungle like guard, it's going to take a while to come out of the jungle. But yeah, Imprison is insanely powerful. Flamethrower, its Unite move with the vision impairing, really, really good. So yeah, I don't know. Candle is just such a solid one. Next up, we can talk about A9 and Pikachu, because these characters, I feel like historically have always been rated similarly. We've seen, you know, one be better than the other at many different points in Unite. But I think they're both solid characters. I want to put A9 in the A tier almost. And I think I will. I think A9 can definitely go into the A tier. Only because A9 has two builds that are so wildly different. You know, you have the Mage A9, which is really good if the enemy team has like a lot of bulky frontliners that you just want to do AoE damage and apply anti-healing with the cursed item. But if the enemy team has some speedsters that you might have a tough time dealing with, or you know, you want to add some more bulk to your team with Aurora Veil. Ever since Aurora Veil got buffed again, I think this character definitely has a lot of potential. It's definitely a character you want to pick and draft. I didn't talk about this with Sylveon, but the issue with characters that have multiple builds, so Blastoise, you know, has like a defender and all-rounder build. Sylveon has like Mystical Fire and Hyper Voice. A9 has Aurora Veil and Blizzard builds, right? These builds require different items to succeed. So Aurora Veil, you want to run things like Muscle Band, Scarf, things that empower your basic attacks, because it's a build that relies on basic attacks. Whereas Blizzard A9, you want to run all the special attack items because you're not going to be attacking as much, right? So, you know, with the Blizzard build, you're going to have Spoon, Wise, Choice, Cursed Incense, maybe Amp, stuff like this. But with Veil, you're definitely going to want to have Muscle Band and always Spoon, sometimes Scarf, sometimes Focus Band, maybe Incense. But either way, like Muscle's really bad in... Muscle Band is really bad in the Blizzard build, and the Veil build is really bad without it. So if you're playing on the ladder, you don't know which build you want to go compared to your opponents. So it can be kind of troublesome. But I think once draft comes out and in competitive, we'll see a lot more A9 get picked. And then Pikachu, I think because it lacks that kind of flexibility, you have Volt Tackle, which can uniquely be powerful into a lot of speedsters in the game. It's not as flexible as A9 in terms of how wildly different the builds are. I do think it's good, but I don't know. Pikachu's thing used to be that it had like one of the fastest unites in the game, and then they just gave Guard a really fast unite. Everything in the game is getting unite move reductions. Like Sylveon is got like a reasonable unite move now. Glaceon's was never that high. Leafeon's is pretty low as well. I don't know. Things in the game just have such low unite move cooldowns that Pikachu doesn't feel that special anymore. Maybe I'd put it like somewhere like here. Venusaur, I mean, I don't know. All the special attackers in the game are just broken. I don't think I need to say much about this mon. It's just so well-rounded. It's good at most parts of the game. Kind of not great as a jungler because it's slow out of the jungle, but you just need level 7 with Solar Beam and you're set. And kind of like the other mons I was talking about, A9 and Sylvan and whatnot, you have two different, wildly different builds you can play. So when draft is out, this Pokemon's going to get a lot more value. Right now, if you're a Venusaur main, right, and you queue up in the game with a Giga Drain build because you have full heal, maybe you have a focus band on, maybe you're playing muscle band, whatever it might be, right? You load into the game and you're like, I want to play Giga Drain Petal Dance this game. But the enemy team has a lot of stuns. They have a lot of really annoying CC in the game, things like Mime maybe or Wiggly, and you would much rather have been Beam. Now you're stuck on a Petal Dance build, right? But when draft comes out, you'll be able to alter your builds depending on what you're playing against. So I do think draft makes Venusaur a lot more valuable. So in competitive, you'll see it a good amount. In solo queue, for that reason, it can struggle a little bit. Delphox, just for the sake of having some contrast, I don't think I can just keep putting these special attackers in the A tier. But I do think Delphox is a fine B tier character. Similar to Pikachu, it's kind of losing its niche as the fast ult character in the game. It still has the fastest Unite move in the game, but now Guard, for whatever reason, has practically the same timer. But Guard's Unite also sucks people in and stuns them. Delphox's niche also used to be that it has anti-healing, but all the special attackers in the game now have access to a similar form of anti-healing with cursed items. So Delphox is just kind of slowly losing its identity. The Mystical Fire Flame Charge build, just, I mean, while it looks really, really flashy, is just not enough damage output, takes too long to scale, it's been nerfed too many times. It's not good into a lot of the meta picks either. So I don't know, it's a fine B tier character. I don't think it's that much, I don't think it's that bad. And then Mew, definitely a character that's kind of hard to rate. It feels awkward not putting this mon in the A tier, just because I know how strong Mew has been and how good it is. But its damage output is just a little too low when you compare it to all the other broken special attackers in the game. So I think it can rest at the top of the B tier, which is nice. But yeah, Mew's flexibility in that it has mobility, it has some peel for itself, it can support its team a little bit, its Unite move can get you out of bad moments. Like, I think Mew's a very well-rounded, strong character, but the main problem with Mew right now, and I feel like Mew is such a hard mon to keep balanced, is it all relies on how Solar Beam is. If Solar Beam does more damage, this mon is broken, and when Solar Beam gets nerfed, this mon doesn't feel good. Right? Like, we saw some Solar Beam nerfs a while ago. It brought Mew down quite a bit. Then Solar Beam and other parts of the kit randomly got buffed one day, and it was good, and then they nerfed Solar Beam again. But with Solar Beam being bad, like, E-Ball Light Screen's just not enough to carry them on into being broken. Because early game, it really doesn't have a lot of move options. Like, Electro Ball's always good in the early game. Light Screen's always good in the early game. Coaching is very situational, but quite strong. Surf just has too long of a cooldown for you to get stuck on Surf, but sometimes you're forced into it. Solar Beam is just too weak to really invest in the early game, and then Agility is pretty bad in the early as well. So half of its moves are pretty awful to switch into, and because they nerfed this from 20 seconds to 25 seconds on the move reset, it's a lot more punishing if you get stuck on a bad move now. E-Ball Light Screen is probably its best moveset in the early game, followed by E-Ball Coaching. And then it's probably like Surf Coaching. Then it's Surf Coaching, then it's E-Ball Agility, then it's probably like Beam Light Screen, and then the other Surf combinations. But yeah, I don't know. Beam is just so weak in the early game. You really, really regret being stuck on Beam, because it does such little damage for such a long cooldown. But I don't know. Mew can definitely work. You need the right circumstances, as is with a lot of other mons. But yeah, this is the tier list, guys. How does it look? I feel like I'm pretty happy with it. Anyone have any questions? Anything we're upset with? I think it's pretty solid.